49ers took the Cowboys right out of their game and made it hard on them. And that's what it felt like. It felt like they got squeezed in the whole second half.
Yeah, and the one opportunity had to gallop down the field in that drive where they were down a touchdown in the fourth quarter. He just misses them. And again, it wasn't a good day. And the interceptions were a common theme all season. The interception total was absolutely inflated. There were a lot of tipped ball interceptions. The interception problem, I think, was a little bit overstated. But I think that the game he played today, I don't know if it's cause for concern. Like, what do you think about it?
It's Dak. I don't know. He's 30. He's 30. This is who he is, guys. I don't know why we think there's going to be some revolution with these players at 30 years old or 29 years old. He's got 2,000 pass attempts in his career. This is what he is. He's going to put the ball in harm's way because he tries shit. That's it. That's his game. He's really smart underneath. He's going to try some stuff on the intermediate throws. He doesn't have that elite arm, so the room for error is a lot greater. So I think when he goes against bad defenses, he just slices them. And when he goes against good defenses, it becomes a coin flip and the balls bounce every which way. So I don't know. I just think because he doesn't have those elite arm tools that he gets a lot more of these mistakes that seem glaring. But he's doing the right stuff, and this offense needs it. Otherwise, this offense would just be suffocating if he doesn't try those intermediate to deep throws that he does try. It's just that he doesn't have the Josh Allen, Mahomes, Herbert types arms, and this offense doesn't ask for that anyways.
So he has a $50 million cap hit next year. Okay, so
are we getting the Dak contract talk?
I'm just listen, okay? If the gap that we're talking about here between those guys that have some of those elite traits and maybe what he looks like in a game like this, when you start getting up to that price tag, does that gap, if he's the 8th to 10th best quarterback in the league, start to matter in these moments?
Yeah, it's a top tier quarterback. I think sweating over $6 million over a tier of quarterbacks is not the discussion I get into. I don't know. There's so many teams that gladly pay that money for this. I think that the quarterback pay, once you get into that tier of the good above quarterbacks, sweating over the millions. It's when you're paying the guys that are Daniel Jones tier 30 something million. That's where you sweat it like that. Oh man, now we got to eke out. Is that an overpay and all that? But I think Dak is worth the penny like that you pay him. And I think that contract's gonna be fine. I don't know. That's how I feel. I know I'm a Dak supporter, but I just think it's ridiculous that would even be like a thing.
For me, the question is, okay, if we're looking at the makeup of the current roster and we just understand that they don't have nearly enough firepower on offense, they don't have a lot of disposable income to create firepower on offense next year. Michael Gallup has a $13 million cap hit. They're already over the 2023 cap. They can save, I think it was $11 million by making Zeke a post-June first cut. How much of that goes to Pollard if they want to retain him?
Right.
Terrence Steele is a restricted free agent. Van Der Esch is a free agent. Barr is a free agent. Dalton Schultz is a free agent. This team that they have right now, it's not like they're flush with resources to make sure that he gets those other weapons heading into next year. So I just worry about the amount of wiggle room that you have overall with the team building question. And he makes $50 million. So, I mean, that becomes the question is when you make that sort of money, you need to be able to elevate the players around you because there aren't as many resources to go around. Yeah, and is the gap between him and the top 5 quarterbacks is that ultimately when you get to this stage, Dak was good this year. The Cowboys offense was explosive this year. It was very good. But when we start getting to these moments where you watch the way that Burrow played today, and I know that his weapons are much better than Dak's are, but when you get into these Mahomes and Burrow, and these are the exact situations where you need to really elevate the players around you, does that margin between him and those guys really start to exaggerate and become glaring? That's my question.
Well, if we have the same question with him, do we have the same question with Josh Allen for his game today? That's what I'm saying too. It's like these guys have these games. Like, yeah,
I think it's a fair point.
I mean, or we talk about, is Joe Burrow worth the contract after that playoff performances he had last year? You know, is he going to be worth that contract in a few years? You know, I don't know. These discussions to me, I think is just Dak is at the level where it's like, yeah, pay him, whatever, done. Like, move on. Like, okay, now we figure out, okay, do we go through the bank?
That's not a question to me. It's not about whether you pay him. It's all right. I would have paid him too. And I think that they should have paid him. But now that they have, and they now deal with the reality of that.
That's it. Don't pay Ezekiel Elliott $20 million. Like, I mean, You pay your quarterback though. Then it's the other decisions that become more glaring. No, I understand that this is their space. And as much as a Dak fan I am, he's not the elite guy. I think he's more in that good, very good tier. Like you said, eighth ish. Like that's where he is in that 6 to 10 range. And I feel like that's a pretty safe thing to say about him. You win with him. You win because he makes good plays for you, but he's not perfect. And so I think when you're in that realm, you have to get smart. You have to hit draft picks. You just have to, because I think it's such a bottom falling out if you're working off of this. I don't know. I think also is that he's worth that money, and I know it's a tight space, and that's where, but you're also living in Jerry world where everything's a little warped, so that's where you don't know what the line of thinking will be down the road.
So he has a $49 million cap at next year. It is second in the NFL among quarterbacks. His number against the cap next year is $10 million more than Josh Allen's. And that is, it's always funny money and you can play with it.
Yeah.
Josh Allen's goes up more, I'm sure, later.
And all that.
And I do think that's what's going to happen, right? So he has a $31 million base salary. How many years are left on Dak's contract? Okay.
2?
So, So, man, it's only 2. Wow.
Yeah, because he wanted to that was the whole thing. He wanted to re-up.
Well, with a lot of these guys, it's we don't think about the fact that the extensions are tacked onto contracts that already existed. Dak was playing on the tag. So he only has 2 more years left on his deal after this one. So
I was going to say 30 and at age 31. And then,
I was going to say maybe they borrow from it, that $31 million base, and don't even think about it because you got a few years left on the deal. You push it further on, but there's only 1 more year left on that contract. So maybe they're not willing to borrow from it quite as much as if he had 3 years left. I don't know.
I don't know with them. I don't know with them. Like
it's a real question.
It is. No, and I totally get what your discussion is, or your inquiry, I should say, is trying to figure it out. But it's like, that's what happens is once you pay these guys, and we talk about it all the time, and everybody wants to harp on it. It's the thing to say. Rookie contract quarterbacks, it's the greatest advantage you can have, because once you get into this world, then every decision has such louder repercussions on your team. And that's what it is. It's just that room for error just becomes tighter and tighter and tighter. That's the world that the Cowboys are in. And that's why when they pay guys like Zeke, and I'm not saying that just the Zeke contract is what cripples them, but when you do that, like we've had this, that's the opportunity cost of everything else that you do down the road. So the Cowboys are the Cowboys. They're just always going to be their own world too.
It would have been nice to have Amari Cooper in this game. I mean, those are the types of moves where you're looking at it like, man, they just lack that. And they overcame it at times with their offense, but losing Pollard, I think, really lays bare just how little explosiveness they had on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
Just general changes for Dallas. Let's say Dan Quinn doesn't get a head coaching job. You think everything just comes back status quo and you figure out how you exist in those margins financially to fine tune the roster? It kind of feels like it has to.
It has to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, McCarthy's winning games with Cooper Rush, so it's kind of hard.
It's an elite team all season.
Top 6 team, no matter where. That's an elite team. That's the top, the top tier. They played great the whole year. Underlying, it wasn't lucky. They had some dominant wins. Some really dominant
win last week.
Yes, in the playoffs. They played balanced football. I don't know, but coordinator wise, no. I think Kellen Moore has improved so much as a play caller this year. And
let's be clear. Both of the coordinators absolutely should be back with their jobs. They're very good at them.
That's what I'm getting to. And it goes back to the initial thing. It's like every time I feel good about the Cowboys, you look at Mike McCarthy and you go, oh, that's right. And I don't know. You just see some of the situations happening today. There's nothing that was like, oh my God, that's on Mike McCarthy. You know what I mean? But, rushing into the 2-minute or not punting the ball, trying to get that extra play before the 2-minute. Like, he did do it, but it wasn't perfect, but I think a lot of what Mike McCarthy has done this year, there hasn't been that moment where I'm like, ha, 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 all of us are going, what is he doing there? He kind of was fine this year. Really was. So I don't know. It's a lot harder to axe him than it was 6 months ago. Totally. And he's really helped himself out. Obviously.
Here's where I worry a little bit. Let's say Dan Quinn gets hired by the Broncos.
Yeah.
And now you don't have that special sauce that he really has been able to provide over the last 2 years. He has been a really good defensive coordinator.
Yes.
And so if you take a step back from this being, I think there's the second best team in the NFL in DVOA on defense this year. Let's say you move back, and I think they were first last year. So let's say Dan Quinn leaves. You still have a lot of really good players. You know, DeMarcus Lawrence has shown that he still has a lot left. We know that Mike is elite. They have a lot of those pieces back. You know, there are a couple guys that are role players that are hitting free agency. Talk about Van Der Esch. They're going to have to do something just at linebacker period because Anthony Barr is going to go. Clearly, they didn't want to put any of those linebackers that were homegrown guys on the field this year. So those are some of the Donovan Wilson as a free agent, just those little tiny pieces that you start to lose, and the flexibility that they've had over the last couple of years starts to go away. And you fall to being the 12th best defense in the league. And you don't really have the resources to make up some of that ground on offense. And you settle back around where you were this year, which is like a top 8 offense. Is this one of the best chances you're going to have based on Dak's contract, based on the trajectory of your franchise, all of that? That would be the unfortunate question I'm kind of sitting there with if Quinn leaves.
Right. Well, especially if Quinn leaves. Well, God, it's funny. It's like it feels the same as how we felt with them last offseason. It's just that they held off the regression. They really did. I mean, that's
on defense. I mean, I think
on defense. And then the offense, once Dak came back, had stretches of brilliance for their legit top 4 offense, no matter how you shook it. But then, kind of tapered off at the end there. But it's kind of funny how that it feels like the same discussion we had last year. They need another playmaker on offense. The defense, they have to find linebacker help. They have to find other guys for these role players. There's going to be a regression on that side. Like, offensive line still has question marks. Like, it's funny that I think we're reverting right back to the discussion before the season and discussion this offseason. So I don't know. Sound like a broken record with it, but I think there is going to be some drop off just naturally because of how the team makeup is.